Hello and welcome to another episode of the Music That Matters podcast. I'm your host, Leland, and today's guest is recording artist, singer, songwriter, and lyricist Alexa Ray. Alexa's had her work streamed millions of times by an audience all over the globe. She's also been nominated for a number of awards, including Best Contemporary Artist at the Hollywood Music in Media Awards in 2018 and again in 2019 for Best Lyricist. When I was introduced to Alexa, it was in the context of Fearless, her latest album and the first she wrote herself. In Fearless, Alexa explores the interplay between the uplifting desire to be fearless and the darkness that is fear itself. Her pop music has a resonance to it that she mixes well with uplifting themes and lyricism. Fearless is about having the courage to start over again, being fearless in everyday life and situations, and finding the space to be vulnerable. But before we get into that, I have a few things I'd like you to take a look at. First, if you haven't already, do check out our Music That Matters posts on the meaning behind and cultural influence of artists and music. Last week, we took a look at Billie Eilish's Bad Guy and Every Age by Jacob Banks. There's more every week, so check it out on our website and subscribe to our newsletter to get new content in your inbox weekly. Next, last week was Jazz Week on our Instagram, where we looked at the intersection of artists like Radiohead and Miles Davis, Thundercat and Herbie Hancock, and even Led Zeppelin and John Coltrane. What? I know. Go check it out. This week, we dive into New York artists past and present. Promises to be a lot of fun, so do go check us out on Instagram at SOS Music Media. Finally, our partners at FN Good Music have launched their merch line. You can find the link in their Instagram bio at FN Good Music to get some. I got myself a nice mug I'll be sporting in future episodes, so you should support too if you feel so inclined. Okay, that's it for housekeeping. What I enjoy most about Alexa is her clarity of thought and purpose, defining her music and life in terms of relationships and pushing herself and others to be themselves through her music. To quote Alexa directly, you just have to start conversations with love. Everything else will follow. On that note, this is the purposeful and powerful Alexa Ray. How do you feel now in COVID, and sort of what are you thinking about now, and how has that impacted your music writing and everything else?
So for me, it's just like my raw reactions to, situations or events, or, just how I'm like feeling in a specific moment. So with everything going on in like COVID, I just kind of used writing almost like a journal to just like, because if this is the way that I'm feeling, maybe other people would relate to it too. So right now, yeah, there's this overwhelming, I don't know what to believe. There's just like so much information. And, I kind of feel like sometimes like that people with the tinfoil hats, like, oh my gosh, is like everything just like out to like get me? I don't know what to believe. Is it a lie? So yeah, it's just crazy. So some of the things that I'm writing now are kind of about those subjects and like, reactions to events, in the world. So.
Well, COVID has been such a uniquely difficult time for everybody, right? So you have like the problem of everybody's impacted by COVID, everybody's stressed out. But then on the other front, I mean, as a musician, like musicians are going through a real tough time too, because you can't engage with your audience in the same way. And so I think it's nice because I think maybe turning to songwriting, I mean, always it should be sort of an outlet perhaps, right? But I think especially in this time, it's nice to like capture those feelings, because I think that a lot of people look to musicians like you, right? To capture these feelings in the moment and sort of push back the feelings to them in the form of music. And so it's interesting you're looking at it that way. And definitely but then you also have the interplay of like you as an artist, but then also you as an individual, right? We're all going through this problem of what do we believe and the misinformation. But I'm glad it can be like a source of inspiration for you anyway.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I hope people enjoy whatever it is that I'm creating and reacting to, but it can also be scary because, it's just like my raw thoughts and you don't know what other people are going to think and feel. So it's definitely vulnerable at the same time. So, but that's, I guess, just part of it all.
Yeah, and I think it's something that you played with really, really well in Fearless, because I did check out Fearless, your newest album, and
thank you.
I really liked it. I mean, I think it's truly music that matters. And like from the start, I really liked that it was telling to me that you began with the title of Begin Again. Because for me, like in the concept of like within the context of COVID, especially, this is a concept that I've been pondering for a while. Because like we find ourselves, like we said, in the midst of a global pandemic, and there's this general sense of like intense polarization that has crippled many. And there's also this feeling of like relative powerlessness, I think,
Right.
that has really like
Yeah.
crippled a lot of people and led to this like intense pessimism. So like here you are like channeling that feeling inside the song, but then you're also like turning it around and actually focusing it, while the feeling of it feels like you're steeping in that, you're focusing it on this concept of like beginning again. You even like talk about, the darkness creeping in and how it's crippling you, but then you also hit the listener with like, can we begin again over and over again? Is this the way that you were thinking about it? I mean, were you thinking about it as to be a power ballad to sort of steep in these feelings of uncertainty? Like, what did it mean for you when you wrote it in the moment?
There's a couple, I mean, this I wrote like even like before COVID. So I've been writing Fearless for like the past like year and a half. Begin Again, I mean, it was kind of about like relationships, to be completely honest, in terms of like just like having the courage to like start over. Like the theme throughout Fearless was I wanted people to be motivated and uplifted and kind of walk away with the feeling of hope. So often when we think of the word or being fearless, we think of someone who has already like overcome fear and running into that burning building, or like going into like battle and war. Like we kind of see like, oh, that's what being fearless is. And so for me, I really wanted to talk about being fearless in everyday life and situations, and what that really looked like. You can't be fearless without having fear. So I wanted the music to be vulnerable, like have that sense of vulnerability, but then also give that final sense of hope and that you can accomplish or like surpass your fears. So with Begin Again, it kind of stemmed from, I guess, a relationship point of view, where sometimes you're so afraid to, either get out of that relationship or just, we just need to start over and like really work things out. So that's kind of where the concept came from. But I think, it's kind of a universal feeling that, you can begin again, and it can be applied to different aspects of life.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? Like, regardless of what the inspiration is, like, it's that if you nail that underlying feeling, right? In this case, like the desire to feel fearless, but the interplay between that and the darkness that is fear. Maybe it's in a
Yeah.
relationship sense. Certainly, I mean, everybody's gone through that as well, like in a relationship sense. But then you can also extrapolate it out to really any part of your life, and that's what I think is so cool about it too. Because like for me, just listening to it now in the time of COVID, that's like how it resonated with me. But of course, it doesn't have to necessarily be that way for you. And nonetheless, like
Right.
the underlying power of it is still there. But I really like the way you play with this concept of like the song almost feels dark, but there's an underlying like power to it. And I like the way
Mm-hmm.
that you kind of play with that, like across this whole album, where it's like really you're saying very like difficult things, like you're presenting these difficult ideas. Because then if you go into Fearless next, it's, to me it was like along the same vein in terms of feeling. But to me, it goes into this relationships point again, which I love to hear more from you from, because this has been something we've focused on heavily at SOS, both because it's such an important issue in everybody's lives, right? Both how we deal with relationships in like an emotional context, and then there's also like the relationships between different genders in society. I mean, there's so many places that this can go. I mean, how were you thinking about Fearless as a song then, as it played into the whole album? And maybe why did you choose to make that the title track?
It's funny because like I had come up with the title for the entire album first, even before like I wrote any songs, which is really backwards. But I really wanted the album to have like a really steady theme. And so sometimes like for me, what's easier, instead of just like write it, like, coming into my writing room, which you're in now, and just like randomly like writing anything, I kind of worked backwards. I wanted to say very like specific things. So I actually thought of the full album and the concept first, and then wrote each track with like a clear, what I wanted to say in mind. And so from that, that's where Fearless, I actually chose the title first. And then the song Fearless was kind of about my relationship with the music industry. And coming from a background, like growing up, I was a little bit bullied. So, just being fearless to be yourself. And especially within the music industry, it can be so hard because you're given conflicted ideas. Oh, be individual, be yourself, you need to stand out, but don't be too weird, like then people don't like you. So it's like it was kind of that, like that concept of like you're kind of going crazy just trying to like figure out what society and what this industry wants you to be and expects from you. But then at the end of the day, just kind of the message that I wanted to get across was, if you're not going to be yourself, then you might as well not be you. You might as well not be alive. So it was just kind of that message that at the end of the day, be you, because, that's why you're here, just to be you. So I wanted to give that positive energy and, I guess confirmation to anybody who needed to hear it.
So do you always lead with that intentionality in terms of purpose and theme in your albums, or is this something that you just felt compelled to do in this case?
I'm trying to think, because the only other like full album that I wrote was From the Ashes. And I guess I kind of did the same thing with that album. So again, I'm kind of like new to writing, but I guess I'm a little bit backwards in that sense, in that like I kind of find like a purpose for why I'm writing, and then I tell a story with, the message that I want to get across and say. So yeah, maybe I do. I
No,
never
it's
thought
great.
about it that way.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that's what I like to play with too, because there's another concept right inside music of like this singles driven culture versus
Yeah.
albums. So like there's
Yes.
almost like this dichotomy now of people thinking about when you do an album and you release it as an album, it should even more so be an art piece almost. Because it's
Right.
like if you're doing it as an album, you could have done it as singles. So by doing it as an
Right.
album, you're clearly curating it together. How do you stand on that? Like what are your thoughts on the album versus single thing and like the meaning imbued there?
It's interesting because I come from like a classical background. I actually started in an opera, so I'm operatically trained. So when I was kind of like growing up and learning the industry, I was seeing it from more of like a classical point of view, and you don't have the same concept as singles. Everything is, you just release an album and it's a body of work, if that makes sense. And a lot of my older fan group, they like to have like physical albums and CDs. So I feel like I've learned like a lot and different genres of the music industry, if you will, because of that. So I've always had this concept of like, oh yeah, you have to have an album, where with if you're going into like more the pop music and more mainstream, like nobody really listens or buys a full album anymore. It's just all about like singles. And so that's how you like, grow your fan base, is like easier, and like the business model of it is easier from a singles point of view. So yeah, I've been finding it, trying to find that balance between being like a true artist and creating, a body of artwork where it's just like, you're trying to build a single just to like get streams and, make money. So, I mean, obviously you have to do both, but I've been trying to still find that balance of, being an artist, but then also understanding the business point of view.
But there, I think you nailed it, right? I mean, that's because the thing is, we have these conflicting needs. Like, as artists, obviously,
Yeah.
you have to make money doing it. But then at the same time, to your point before, even with your intentionality in writing Begin Again and Fearless, it's like you also want to lead with what's you. You don't want to be sort of like told who to be, because you won't be able to be that person well. So it's a similar issue. And that's why I like asking, because it's kind of like, it's more, I think, just a question of who do you feel like you are? Because the answer is you can pull singles out of albums if you write an album that's full of singles. And it might actually help you because it'll tell more of a story that'll be more compelling and people will latch onto you. But then also, if that's not how you operate, if you're just sort of someone who's like can drop singles, that might be more in line with you. So it's cool that you've acknowledged that this is like something that is a new reality you've got to play with, but the albums came first. But I'd love to go back to the starting an opera. How did you find your way to, Fearless, the sound you have in Fearless? Because it's clearly not opera.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I think I have to thank my parents for the classical background. They listened to, opera and, orchestral music growing up. So I always listened to classical music, I guess, because that's what I was used to them listening to. And so I actually grew up wanting to be an opera singer. I thought I was Met bound. Joined a choir, went to university, studied classical music, and even did some operas in Europe, which was really cool. And I think I got, to that level and just kind of realized like, this is cool, but I think there's something that's missing. And I feel like I was always trying to find that, like, what was it that I felt like I wasn't good enough, or like something that was missing. And I think I just didn't have the same level of creative freedom that I do now. I kind of felt like I had more to offer than just reading notes on a page. And so I always kind of, tried to put more of myself into the music and wanted to connect more and more with the audience. But then I would have teachers who was like, oh, but you don't articulate it that way. And that's not what's written on the page. So I think I was kind of like one of those students that, was kind of, I just felt like I didn't belong. So I kind of went through a journey of trying to figure out where I did belong. And I kind of stumbled across film score and TV music. So that's when I kind of started writing my own. And so I've blended that world of my classical background with pop vocals. So I guess, that's how it kind of came to be.
That makes so much sense given the song On My Own. Like in the middle of it, I remember it was kind of like, I felt like we were in the depths of a movie soundtrack, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
You even hit us with like that deep bass. But I think that's great because, you're lucky, first of all, and it was good that you thanked your parents on multiple levels. I'm sure they appreciate it. But also, my mom was playing like Destiny's Child in the house. So it could have gone differently if you're at my house. But I for me too, and when I grew up, it was important that we learn music in general in my family. My parents were not at all musical, but they felt the need to like have my brother and I at least attempt an instrument. And so I kind of like you started off more classical, although I was never singing at the time. I was doing violin, but I learned it via the Suzuki method. And to be honest, I hated it because it was really it felt like more homework from class, right? Where it was like,
right.
You're basically just they even gave us these CDs that you'd put in and listen to. And you had to just like use that to then play the music and learn music theory that way. But it really felt like I was just trying to get 100% on the test, which was play the song exactly as it had been composed, which takes the creativity out of it. But it's awesome 100%. Because so many artists like you start off there because of how technical the training can be and then lead to something like this. But I want to go back to maybe On My Own is something you can chat to too, because I thought that was something that's maybe relevant here because it felt like more about free and independence. Maybe you can talk about what your inspiration was there.
Yeah, I kind of had the vision of, kind of when you finally find yourself, because I think, I was really going through a couple of years, that transition phase between like opera and really finding myself in the industry. And, who is Alexa Ray in the world? Who do I want to be? What do I want to say with my music? And what kind of impact do I want to have as an individual in the world? And, that sounds like really like a lot of heavy duty questions to be asking myself, but that's really, kind of where I was at. And I don't want to just make music, to just make noise. I want it to do something and be something more and inspire and uplift people. I want my music to have purpose, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I think On My Own was just kind of that realization of, you kind of feel like, things might not be perfect. You're still kind of learning, your wingspan, so to speak. But I kind of had that vision of, you're just spreading your wings and flying, and you might fall a couple times, but as you flap your wings, you're just going to get stronger until you, just kind of soar. So that was kind of like the vision that I had in my head that I wanted to kind of put into lyrics and words.
The last song I really wanted to touch upon here, because I thought it was quite interesting. And again, this plays well to like maybe your classical upbringing or anything else. You know, there was a song, Father, Can You Hear Me? Right.
Yes.
And to me, it was just, it sounded like a prayer. Like I'm imagining you on your knees in like a dark place, but where were you? Like paint the picture for us. And what is the song all about?
I guess this one was kind of touching on my personal spiritual journey. I come from a Christian background, grown up Christian. I do believe in God. Just want to throw that out there. But I have had moments in my life where I've been really frustrated. And, with the church, and maybe more of, not believing in God, but just the organizations within the church. And I don't want to offend anyone, but if I'm being completely honest, it was just kind of I don't think that they always really have God's heart. And so this was just kind of, I guess, like corruption within the church. And what actually stemmed from this song was all of the issues with like within the Vatican and like the Catholic churches, and like the little boys who were getting like taken advantage of. And so it's just kind of like, you tell us to believe in faith and in, all of these things, but then, how are the people who are saying that they believe in God are like doing these horrible, horrible things. So yeah, I was kind of going really, really deep with that song, to be completely honest with you. And just, I guess, the corruption within, the church.
And that's,
So.
I mean, that's a great personal example, because I think there's also a proxy to really whatever anybody's is. Like for you, it's thinking about the corruption in religion. But I think a proxy for almost anybody is like this thought of, we're hit with so much information today, right? We know so much about people. And that means that you're going to know that there are bad things about somebody or some movement or anything. And then you're also going to see the good things too. And so it's about how you navigate that, because it's the thing of like in religion, it's like, can I believe in religion strongly? And at my core, believe in the tenets of religion to be very, very important to me personally. But then also, how do I digest when the human beings who personify, God or the organization that it falls in do bad things? And I think that's a really interesting thing to play with. And I love that you've done that. That's a really, really engaging thing. And I commend you for going for it. That's a tough one to talk about.
It was really tough. And like, even when people ask about it, I'm like, should I water it down? Should I be honest? But it's like, I wrote the song, these are the things that I kind of like wanted to talk about. So I guess I should talk about them.
Don't shy away from it. Good. I know it's harder than ever to talk about them though.
It is. It really is. And, at the end of the day, I think, I think you just need to start conversations with love. So, everything else will follow, but you just have to, spread words of love.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I think if love is at your foundation and respect is at your foundation, you can talk about anything, you can talk to anyone. And so that, I really love that you said that, because I honestly wish more people would take that to heart. And often I need reminders too. So it's beautiful to have like albums like yours and reminders like that, that's out there. Who's your go-to artist right now?
I mean, I go through cycles. I mean, there's so many amazing artists out there. I mean, I'm kind of just listening to the big ones right now because I'm just trying to get better at songwriting. So, I'm just listening to like everything and anything, really listening to lyrics, I guess, and just like, so inspired by like how some artists, just have what do you call it, like imagery in their words, and can evoke such emotion from interesting word choices. So, I mean, I love Sia. I love Lady Gaga. I mean, everyone's already listening to them, so that's nothing new, but they are incredible writers. I guess one like newer up and coming artist that also kind of does a more pop version of what I'm doing is her name is Fozia. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a
I
Canadian
haven't.
artist,
Huh.
and she kind of does like a little bit of, maybe not to like my epic extreme level of like mixing like film score with like pop vocals, but she has an interesting mix, and she is a really great writer. So I hope she like takes off, because she's like, I would say she's like on the cusp of becoming like, huge. So she definitely has it. So if you don't know who she is, you go check her out.
How do you go about finding new music?
Probably not the best way. I don't actually sit and listen to like every single song like straight through, unless it's like that captivating. And then
Yeah.
I guess that's how I kind of know it's a good song, if I've actually sat and listened to it for like, the whole duration. But I literally just go on like Spotify and like sift through like playlists, listening to anything that kind of captures my attention. But I'm like super ADD in that respect, that like I'll listen to something and like after like 20 seconds, if it's not like right there. And I kind of go through it from like a technical point of view. Like when I'm, I guess, more researching music and like wanting to get ideas and inspiration, I'll dissect it in that, why did that capture me at the first 20 seconds? What is it that I appealed to like instantly? So I guess I kind of attack music from a very analytical point of view, kind of more like a mathematical equation in terms of the production. Like, why did this work? Why do I think that that's interesting? But then from like the lyric point of view, it's just that raw connection and reaction. Why am I reacting to it? What's the word that made me, respond that way? So when you're saying, well, why do you listen to certain artists? Well, sometimes I find it hard to sit down and just like listen for enjoyment, because I'm constantly dissecting it. So I feel like, it's a blessing that I can do that, but then also a curse, because it's hard to just, turn that part off.
Well, it's good. You shouldn't temper it anyway. Um, well, Alexa, thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thanks for sharing your insights. Thanks for sharing your style. Thanks for sharing your music, and thanks for making music that matters. Really.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is so much fun and great getting to know you as well.
Yeah. Is there anything else that is going to be coming out, or how can people keep track of you if they really felt touched by your music and by Fearless?
I'm most active on Instagram. So, if people are interested in following my journey, I'm on Instagram, Alexa Ray Music, and I'm selling my physical album of Fearless through my website, which is alexarayofficial.com. And currently, I'm actually already working on another album with Randall. So this one still film score pop mix, but a little bit more of the pop side than the film score. So we're kind of working on that, I guess, that spectrum of blend. And this is definitely going to lean more to the pop side.